Okay.
So I just want to bounce off of what Mariah said. So in our household, I've been having trouble with, I had hurt my tailbone years ago, but trouble with my lower sacrum rotating, which is our base chakra, which to me is the red, as we're talking about these spiral dynamics. And it never occurred to me that this week it got worse. Now I had done a lot of things until Mariah, you said something. And then Friday, my husband got into, he's still in bad pain right around the same area, the sacral into the sciatica. And so we've been talking about what's the messages around all of this. So it does feel like there's an energy, whether we're directly here together and doing the Halodyne process around the spiral or not, that's probably working all of us.
Yes. Yeah, it absolutely will be. And the effect will be rippling out into others within our environment. So the frequency shifts and messages will be reflecting outside of us too in many different ways. So I think that's a very powerful understanding and observation, and it will be interesting as we progress through the different levels of the spiral to see what appears, what manifests physically, emotionally, and otherwise as we progress with the group. So fascinating. How about the rest of you? Any other sort of personal insights this week or in the last 2 weeks? How do you feel about the spiral work, having had maybe an opportunity to sit and cogitate? I love that word. Sit and sort of mull it over, and contemplate.
I think it's interesting to have a look at where you've been, if you like, and where you've come from.
Yeah.
You know, and also to recognize, because often we don't, you know, we can look back and we say, you know, look how far I've come, or, you know, I've cleared that out of me, and then something else crops up and it's almost like you feel like you're back to square one, when in actual fact you're really not.
Yes.
But you feel almost like, you know, like as I said, you know, that message yesterday. It's, for me, it's about being so integral now and really standing in my own truth, no matter what, no matter how hard it is, and you know, looking at the different layers that I've had to go through in order to be able to do that without the fear of, and that's the beauty and the power of being in this group, is that, yeah, you know, I was like, yesterday I was thinking, should I say something, and I'm like, do you know what, I might be able to actually help other people by doing that, and I don't know how, but you know, it was like, it's a safe environment to be able to speak from my heart and say what I need to say without there being any you know me, Julie, and you know that I love you to death, and there was no, it was trying to just be honest and say, this is what happened to me and this is how I felt about the whole, it wasn't, you know, it's a lot of things all come together in a way, you know.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I can see how, from doing the Diamond Reiki, for instance, and you know, even the 1111 portal, how there's been this huge upshift of, right, come on, it's time to step up, it's time to be seen, it's time to be more magnificent than you've ever been before. Do you know what I mean? And in order to do that, you have to be able to speak from your heart, speak honestly and truthfully, and not be afraid of, well, there might be some, I'm not saying that's what I was thinking, but you know, in other situations there might be some confrontation because of that, because obviously that a lot of us have had that fear of confrontation, yes, you know. But being able to, in a safe place, be able to step it up and say, this is how I actually feel and this is what happened to me, without there being any fear of comeback
or judgment.
Yeah. And it's just, and also from a perspective from me, as in, this is about, everybody has their own opinion, And, you know, going back to the spiral dynamics, everybody has their opinion, everybody has their view, everyone receives the information from the place that they need to receive it. So it wasn't about saying, you know, any judgment on anyone else either. It was about being totally honest and truthful and saying, this is what happened to me because of what's going on in my life and how I was triggered. But interestingly, it was quite a powerful trigger, you know, and I feel like, oh, I've done all this work, I've stepped up, I'm clearing all these things, but to be able to see what all those, you know, like I put there about, you know, the ice age, you know, that was a massive fear when I was in school, you know. It was this huge thing of, this is what's going to happen, but to recognize that the fear was because we always lived away and we were always moving about, that I would not be able to get back home to my grandparents, for instance. That I hadn't realized that was still there. You know, so
it was a powerful insight in respect of revisiting, because those fears would come from those red and purple levels of the spiral. And what we're doing, and you'll see, I'll show you where I was coming from with my comments in respect of how I perceived the message, not yours, but the video.
Yeah.
When we get to the green level of the spiral. So it's really interesting to see, because I sat with it and I went, where is this coming from? This is really interesting. And there were a couple of words and a couple of phrases, and I just went, okay. The whole essence of what we're doing when we do this spiral work is just so interesting, because we're restoring the entire health of our internal spiral. We're restoring, and as you said, it's about being in integrity, and it's integrity in so many ways. So it's about the integrity of our inner spiral. It's about how healthy every single one of those layers is, so that we can manifest and support the positive presentation of each of the value sets and qualities of each level of the spiral. So it's also then recognizing wherever some of the challenges come in. So I want to go in a little bit more into the depths of the red and the violet, and then we'll progress through the next two layers. 2 or 3, we'll see how far we get this evening. Because it adds, I think, some depth of understanding in respect of our current life and how we progress through the spiral in our current life. Because last week we looked at the soul ages, and we looked at sort of the overall attributes of each of the spiral levels. So I want to also equate the spiral levels to our current life, because when you start doing the holodyne processes with each of the levels, you'll find that there's probably a trigger into a certain age, which is, Bonnie, what you found, I think, and the rest of you also have experienced in respect of the triggers this week and what's come up. So it just is, it's all good. It's all really powerful, really positive, really uplifting stuff. Mariah, did you get the email with the slides, by the way?
Thank you.
Okay.
I've also sent Mariah the questionnaire as well. Save you doing that, Julie.
Thank you, Rachel. That's wonderful. You're an angel. Thank you. Okay. So let's just recap very quickly. You've got the essence of the spiral, and I think, did I explain the last time how the spiral moves from individual values and qualities into the development of levels of group cohesiveness, and that they build on each other? From the group, we then get the breakout into another level of individuation and understanding, and then that in itself leads to the next level or the next layer. So you guys have got that understanding? So it's like on this slide, the second slide that I've got up here, you've got the survivalist, which is individual. Those would be your individual nomads. The traditionalist, the purple, is a group value. So it's about family, tribal communities, close-knit communities. In each case as well, what prompts or promotes the evolution of consciousness through the layers of the spiral is usually some kind of crisis situation or instability. So you can see how that also measures up against the global situation that we're in and what is forcing the evolution of consciousness at a global level at the moment. So it's coming at us from a number of different directions. But what usually forces this movement or forces the evolution, forces the growth, is some chaos, instability, and stress within the particular level or lens that we may be focused on at the moment, and that pushes us to grow into the next level. And then once that happens, it can actually take quite a while for that new level for the transition and for the new level to become manifest. So even though we may resonate with various aspects of the spiral, they may not necessarily be mature. You could find that some of the mature holodynes are still setting, say for instance, you're beginning to resonate with the yellow, but there are immature holodynes attributed to that and to perhaps the layer below it, which is the green, and then the mature holodyne, which will support the integration within the yellow, is bordering on, if you like, those outer levels of the spiral that we need to bring in order to fully integrate all of those values and begin to live them in our lives. So there's a huge amount of work. It's not as easy as just, hey, presto, you slip into the next level and, way, there I am, you know, now I'm turquoise, kind of thing. And then we find that also where there have been unresolved issues in other layers of the spiral, we still have to go back and address them so that we can do so without a higher, more expanded level of consciousness, go back and address the lower ones so that we can restore the overall health of the spiral. And one of the things that really fascinated me was how, for instance, if we had, and this happens with so many people, sort of a traumatic childhood or an unsettled, insecure childhood in the very, very early years, how that can create or cause an instability in the spiral. So we can make it, we can evolve up here so that we're in yellow and turquoise, but we still have, but then as this expands, it's kind of like the instability starts kicking in because of the weight above it, that we need to go back and fix and restore down at this level. And that's why it's really important that we're building it the way we're doing. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. It does make sense as well, and you don't realize just how deep rooted some of those issues are.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, you know, having the understanding now, and you know, having this much greater awareness. Like I was saying, for me, you know, it was amazing, and I was thinking, okay, what is this all about? You know, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting, and that makes so much sense. Yeah.
Well, what's fascinating also, and it is really interesting, is that my newsletter that I put out earlier this week, it was like there was a voice that I found that was quite different to the way that I would normally present the newsletters. And I don't know, you know, sort of who's had an opportunity to read that. And that was an article that I read that also really triggered at a much deeper level, one of the lower levels of the spiral. And suddenly this voice came out. And like you, Rachel, it's kind of like, I have to be able to speak this without fear of being judged. And that had to come out. You know, that had to be presented. Some interesting comments in respect of like a couple of people. That was an interesting voice in your newsletter. I went, yeah, it really was.
as my daughter would say, it's sassy, Julie. And I
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Good point, yeah.
She needed to be heard. So I think we're all going through this, and this is part of the stepping up, because it's actually part of the intention that we've set, even by just being a part of this group. So we're being tested. And it's our inner self that's testing us. It's not an external test. Look at Mariah's face. It's an internal. It's an internal test that says, right, this is what you said you wanted. This is where you want to be.
Yeah.
Right? Are you really ready for it? Now, let's get down to some of the work. You know, so very, very powerful stuff. And thank you all for just being so much a part of it. Let's have a quick look at the physical age development and how they tend to relate to the full development and manifestation of the spiral levels. If we look from the bottom up, the traditional group is something that affects us generally from birth to 2 years. So that's where we get, and we are subjected to the rituals, the disciplines, the manifestation of very specific roles within the family group. You know, you have the father and the mother, and you know, you have the nurturing and a warm, colorful, creative environment. And in an ideal childhood from 0 to 2, that is what you would actually be supported with. So you can kind of see, I think, perhaps from some of those purple summaries, I've got some more detail on that for you now, how that can really go so wrong. You know, how one little trigger, one little disruption to a ritual or a routine for a child between 0 and 2 years can really have quite a detrimental effect on the internal beliefs that their child actually then grows up with. So it's a very, very powerful foundation, and that's where that value system develops the most, and where it's most significant. The red, which is the next layer, is about individual power. That's where we kind of start almost finding our own place within the group and a sense of individuality. That tends to affect us and develop between the ages of 2 and 5 years. And like I said, I think last week, it's kind of like the range and the time of the terrible twos. So that's where you're testing boundaries, you're testing respect. You know, you are making your voice heard. You realize that you have a voice and you want this voice to be heard. And how many of us grew up in an environment where it was like kids should be seen and not heard? You know, where we were not allowed to find that voice. So that also puts into perspective what we've been experiencing this week. It's like, this is my voice. So that a lot of that happens as well within the 2 to 5 years age bracket as well, and it's where we begin to understand boundaries, and if those boundaries or guidelines for adequate behavior or proper behavior are not in place, and if we are not treated with respect and afforded respect as a developing human, how that can also adversely affect our perception of ourselves as individuals. So it goes right down into the core. 2 to 5 years. Now the qualities here as well, if the individual aspects of the red, this is all about power, this is all about expression in a very individualistic way. If that is not checked, it can run riot. And, you know, we get dictatorships and those manifesting that age or that distortion of that particular age bracket of the red value system out there in society as your dictatorships, and that can really run riot in society. It's like having a group of anarchists running around, you know, and nobody's actually looking at the greater whole and what is good for the greater whole. So in respect of personal or individual development, what happens then is we are presented with a bigger structure, which is a community, the beginnings of societal structure with its stability, with its laws, with its moral values. This is where we start learning about the moral values of society, about the justice system, about what is right and wrong, during the school years. So that's really sort of round about the ages 5 to 11, where we begin to develop a sense of our place within a greater societal system, and also then respecting the boundaries, respecting authority, and developing those guideline behaviors that will support us in society as we develop. So they tend to kick in with the school system, but we can see how that can very easily go awry when authoritarianism is misplaced or overplayed, taken to its extreme. Then you also get like black and white, this is right, that is wrong, and there's no gray areas in between. And it's the need to be right. So there are all sorts of things that play out when that is out of balance. And that can result also in chaos. But there's a lot of conformity within that blue level of the spiral, and the need to conform. But often that need to conform is then overdone. So what happens is you get those individuals within the group who are seeking another level of individual expression, who begin to rebel against the conformist attitudes and values of that group. And from an age perspective, this is where you get the teenage years kicking in. So it is about wanting to be successful, wanting to shine, wanting to achieve this. So orange is known as the achiever level. It's about setting personal goals rather than the goals of a moralistic conformist society. And it's about status symbols. So you think about teenagers and they've got to have all the brand labels. I mean, when you sort of generally between the ages of 3 and 9, the labels don't really matter, although that has taken a very serious turn with the advertising industry marketing more and more to younger and younger ages. But teenage years are all about the labels. They're all about rebelling against authority, against the parents, about the kids actually trying to find another sense of, or another aspect of their personal expression in society, and wanting to be seen to be successful at something, whether that be sport, whether it be in forging forward, whether that be in science and technology. It is also an obsession and a focus on science and technology for making life better. So in these particular years, it's about wanting to improve the quality of life rather than just conforming to the norm. So that's what's really important there. And that teenage years, as we say here, I've got a little arrow that says, that can actually continue. So you see people like this in the business environment really exhibiting those qualities full swing. So they've never really grown out of their teenage years, and it's go, 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 burn the candle at both ends, party, party, strive, goals, and I've achieved that one. What's the next one? What's the next one? It's just continually moving forward. So what can actually happen there is that there is a complete lack of concern then for the greater environment, and how these behaviors and this focus on status and symbols and the need for success is actually impacting the greater environment. And it's generally with adults when they get to a burnout stage, or they've achieved all of the goals that they wanted and they're left feeling a little bit empty, going, there's got to be something more to life than this. And that's the question that really guides then the evolution, the next jump into a much bigger relationship with the world around them. So it's not just the conformist society, it's now a relationship with the global world, with the ecosystems, with people. It's about then seeking a level of harmony in a far greater way that doesn't always require the rules and regulations. So it becomes internally driven, an internally driven expansive relationship with life and with people that actually seeks harmony. Okay, or seeks something more. And it's really, really expansive. The move from orange into green is actually also quite a big jump. It is in the green that we begin to see the balancing of the left-right hemispheres of the brain and a more whole-brained, open perspective of life. And that can really take individuals through sort of into it. It can kick off as an adult. The green can often only be realized as individuals get into middle age and hit midlife crisis, where they're saying, you know, I've spent my whole life doing this for what? You know, and that's what, okay, we'd divorce the wife and leave the family and go off and, you know, sort of be a nomad or do something completely different. It's like it's quite a huge value change in respect of that step up from orange into green. And then the yellow and turquoise is what they call the second tier, and there's only a very small percentage of the population that actually do manage to make that step leap, the change in the brain function, in the neural networks, to actually take them into a more integrative way of thinking, a process-based way of thinking that we see in the yellow and in the turquoise. Yellow wants to break down all of those silos in society that prevent one group of individuals from being able to communicate with another. It's a process-based thinking in organizations, for instance, where instead of you having, because I remember working with this and seeing this, instead of having your suppliers here and then you've got your manufacturer here and they're all in individual silos, and you've got your salespeople here and your marketing people in another silo, and you've got your distribution people in another silo, and then you've got your customers in another silo. The integrated systems approach wants to break down all of those barriers. That's really what yellow seeks to do, break down all of the barriers to effective communication across the board, and then creating seamless networks. So very, very small percentage of people. And what is interesting is that we see a lot of talk, and of course the globalistic synergy of the turquoise really begins to take us into a relationship aspect again. So yellow is individual and it's integrative. Not only do we want to break down the silos and the boundaries within society, we begin to break down whatever boundaries we have placed around all of the segments of our own lives, and begin to see the seamlessness of our journey, the purpose in everything, and we begin to build those bridges within. Okay, so that's yellow. Turquoise takes us back to another relationship aspect. We will only see this generally in its mature form in late adulthood. So we see the beginnings of it emerging within people, but it's an immature aspect that we're actually seeing emerging. And that is sort of truly understanding the relationship from a cosmic universal perspective. So it's how our Earth is impacted and relates to everything else that's going on in the cosmos. So a lot of the talk that may seem to be universal in nature is actually coming from individuals who are still strongly steeped in green. And what happens there is that the voice that comes through tends to still be very orientated in the green values. And once you've actually worked with this, you begin to see where it's coming from. It may sound turquoise, but there are certain clues in the language and the messaging which place it back into green. So it's an immature turquoise and not the mature turquoise that we're actually seeing and understanding. And a lot of the new age that might appear to be turquoise is green. strongly in green, and has not made the leap into the integrative, the full integrative thinking of yellow and turquoise. Okay. So that's just an indication of where we might see it. So really from green up to turquoise, we tend to see the mature manifestations and appearance of these layers only in adulthood. We will obviously, because everybody is all aspects of the spiral, we will see glimmers and glimpses of children, obviously, displaying and demonstrating attributes of these higher levels of the spiral. And the new children that are coming in certainly do have an awareness that gives them insight into these aspects of the spiral. It's not always fully matured, and it still needs to, and they would still need to go through the stabilization at all levels in order to hold the spiral in place. Is that okay, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's have a look. So birth to 2 years. Do you feel that you need any more insight into the purple and the red at the moment, or are you feeling reasonably comfortable with those? Because I do have some more keywords and things that we can put in here.
Yes, would you do that, Julie?
Yeah. All right. Let's have a look a little bit more in depth, because at least you'll have it in the recording. So I need to stop sharing the slides, or pause this share and do a new share. Hold on. Where's that Word document? That's it, that's it, that's it, that's it. Where is it? No, I don't want that. Oh, come on. Okay. Let me open the Word document and see if I can actually get that going.
One of the things I've noticed actually recently is when people are talking to me, and it's interesting what you just said there about, you know, people who seemingly are awake are still, you know, within that lower, that green, not lower, but the green.
Yeah.
I had a phone call from a friend the other day, and although I can see there's no sort of ulterior motive as such, but I think subconsciously there was, and I could see she wants me to be on board with something that she's doing and this new training and everything, and she wanted to offer it me for free, and I was like, oh, that'd be very nice. And then part of me was like, no, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do training. I've got, you know, the Diamond Reiki is going to be coming. But it was interesting listening to her talking, because this is somebody who I've in the past looked at and thought, you know, you're so much more expanded than me, and you know more than me. And yet now there's this feeling of she's repeating, and it's not that there's an expansion, and it's interesting because her new thing that she's doing has got the word expansion in it, but there's still there's a use of words, and her vocabulary is very, very flowery, and she's very expressive in her vocabulary.
Very green.
Yeah. Yeah. And but I was listening to her talking, and even while she was talking, then afterwards I was like, actually, I can see you in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, so
yes, that's the beauty of it. I think it's kind of like in doing this, the lenses are cleared, and you suddenly do. It's like we're seeing ourselves in a different way, and also seeing other people in a different way. And it's also that as our inner sense of value, and as we begin to suspend judgment and accept who we are more deeply, and as we unfold that magnificence, literally, we are able to see others in a different light, because we've stopped putting them on pedestals. You know, we do kind of see things as they are, and as we are, with greater clarity.
And we put ourselves in a different, you know, a more valued position.
Yes.
You know, rather than, and it's not necessarily that you see them in a lesser position. It's
No.
just that now you see yourself in a more strong,
Yes.
secure position.
Yes.
You know?
You feel stronger within,
Yeah.
and that is ultimately what this journey is, and it is about building that inner strength in a really beautiful, deeply profound, enduring way. So that will stay with you. Right, are you all seeing this screen with the Word document?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Mariah?
No.
Oh. Okay, have you got your notebook, Mariah? I can email it to you. Oh, you'll see it in the recording. So what I've got here is it's a pictorial which helps us to perhaps put into perspective. And Mariah, sorry, I can't email this to you at the moment because it's part of a huge workbook. So I would need to extract 10 pages in order to be able to email it to you. So
Would I be able to take a photograph of it with my phone and then send it to Mariah on Messenger?
Why don't you? Yeah, yeah,
try that,
brilliant, Rachel. Thanks. If you want to do that.
What about
Yeah.
a screenshot? What about a screenshot?
I've got the questionnaire too. Thank you, Rachel.
Okay, I'm not sure how I do a screenshot on my computer.
Okay, then just stick with your camera.
I'll do it with the camera. I'll go the old-fashioned way,
Yeah,
the old-fashioned modern way.
Okay, so here we take a look at the purple individual, just to give you an overview. And what we've got is quadrants here with the positive aspects. Every layer of the value spiral, of the spiral dynamics manifestation, or of each level or layer of the spiral, has both positive and negative aspects to it. So it's really important for us to be able to understand both. And what often prompts the appearance of the negative aspects of the spiral are the stress factors impacting on the values. Okay, so let's have a look at the purple one. So we know that the attributes here, the positive attributes of the purple at the bottom of the spiral, are about warmth, about support, about traditional practices and values, at the value of ritual, about respecting elders. It's about life being colorful and creative. So there's a lot of creativity that is actually birthed in the security of this aspect of the spiral. And there is a strong group identity, which I think we had actually mentioned before. If we have a look at what the purple individuals are, those that are strongly steeped in purple, what they value the traditional ways above all else. They have a strong belief in spirit beings, as in ancestors, ancestral, not worship, because I used to completely misunderstand this. It is acknowledgement of our ancestral heritage and the spirit beings. However, what purple can tend to do is externalize power into the hands of spirit beings. Okay, rather than recognizing that they have any power. Individuals who are strongly enmeshed within this value system do not perceive themselves to have any individual power at all. So there is an externalization of power with spirit beings in this particular case. There are, however, values associated with clear role relations. Mother, father, or caregivers, whatever that might be, But there's a clear role. There is a nurturer, there is a strong masculine presentation. So the typical or archetypal mother and father, siblings, aunts, uncles, the extended family, the grandparents, the storytellers, you know, those that actually uphold the traditions for the group. So it's the extended family. It's about honoring and awareness of sacred places. And it is, you know, you think about some of the first peoples, as we call them, they are very strongly anchored into the purple system, or the purple aspect of the spiral. And there's very, very clear, what's the word, value placed upon sacred places, like Stonehenge, like you know, sort of the stone circles that appeared how many thousands and thousands of years ago, like very specific stone altars, places in nature, groves within nature, that kind of thing. So there's extreme value placed upon sacred places, and the desecration of those places would cause untold stress for this particular group. Also very, very strong, and I think we did cover this the last time, a very strong focus on protecting bloodline. So hence no marrying outside of the family, no marrying outside of the tribe. Excuse me. Okay, so what happens is anything that causes stress on this system can cause and result in the appearance of a lot of the negative aspects of the spiral. And in a sense, the stress and those negative manifestations force the evolution of individuality from the group. They force the appearance of leaders for the group or the tribe. So you'll see how this actually works. So what stresses these individuals is change. Anything mysterious that is outside of the norm, outside of the realms of what they understand, outside of the community, really causes stress on them. So you can see how that would lead to mysterious happenings, things happening at the universal level, meteors. Oh, excuse me, my throat's a bit dry. Mysterious things happening in the heavens that they could not explain or could not understand, and that's so much bigger than them. That's really something that they are powerless in the face of. So anything mysterious causes incredible stress. If there is a lack of structure within the group, that causes stress. It's a lack of cohesiveness, and omens and portents. So any omen lends itself towards the appearance of superstition and stress on the value system and stress on the harmony, the relative harmony of the group. So when those stress factors come into play, whether it be external or as a consequence of other factors outside of the group, that can lead to the manifestation of many of the negative aspects, such as then witchcraft. Witchcraft is then calling upon the spirit beings that are external to themselves, the placing of, you know, sort of spells and voodoo. That's where you see things like voodoo and some of the African traditions of witchcraft, the sangomas, coming into play. Faction fighting. So you would find, you know, sort of groups fighting with each other because each one is wanting to maintain their own internal harmony. Any threat from another group leads to fighting of the factions. They're not able to live as a bigger society. A lot of fear, very, very fearful individuals. There's all sorts of things that trigger fear within this particular level. Revenge. And we hear a lot of that as well from a tribal perspective and protecting the bloodline, any injurious activity that actually disrupts the group then leads to a need for revenge. So you get this constant fighting. Superstition, so omens can actually lead to the manifestation of myth and superstition. So people have an inability to read and to understand those particular occurrences, so they build up myths around what they are experiencing. So a lot of the stories that are then passed down are actually encoded. So a lot of the stories, for instance, that we are aware of today were built around mysterious happenings that they didn't know and the mythology that they'd actually created around it. So we need to be able to interpret that from a symbolic perspective in respect of what they may have been experiencing.
I just asked
Yeah.
a question, Julie.
Yeah.
It's interesting, you know, looking at the witchcraft aspect. It seems that as people are becoming more and more empowered, if you like, that they're identifying more with the witch, which to me is wise woman aspect. So, you know, I suppose we've all got that aspect within us where, you know, that's being from the fearful aspect of being a witch or being called witch or what, you know, that sort of thing. But it's interesting how, in a way, it's sort of become a positive aspect. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think what you're referring to is almost a mature derivation of the witchcraft that we're actually talking about here, because we know that the original term witch, as you said, refers to wise one, wise woman, and it is also where people are working with it and identifying with it at the moment, is that they have the internal power themselves to create magic. So it does, that aspect comes in from a more evolved level of the spiral. And it's internally led, whereas this is externally led. And it's also about magic and witchcraft in order to protect the group. So so you can see how this is like an immature aspect. Yeah, so I get what you're saying, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Individuals as well within these communities very often lack a sense of individuality. And when these communities are stressed, it leads to the need for somebody to step up and take on a leadership role to help to restore order and to actually demonstrate power for the group, okay, as a need for the group to be able to maintain cohesiveness. And it's only somebody with power, perceived power in situations like this, that are able to, you know, sort of come up perhaps with force or solutions to actually restore harmony between factions or groups or different tribes, or restore some level of harmony within the tribe by having somebody who can give clear directions to the group. So this is where the individual begins to evolve out of that situation into a position of leadership. But it tends to be the initial development of a selfish development of leadership. So the individual themselves then focuses on their own power rather than the beneficial attributes to the group. So that's in its immature form. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can almost see how stresses on that system force the evolution out of it.
And it's interesting from our perspective as old souls, in a way, as how we tend to be more isolated, don't we?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like, I'm done with all of that drama. You know, I don't need that drama, and we begin to restore our inner power in a much more expansive way, and an expansive and all-inclusive integrated way. Yeah, so it's much broader. So the purple individual, warm, supportive, ritual tradition, respect elders and traditional leaders, the chieftains of the tribe, strong group identity, they live for the good of the group. And that's that all for one and one for all. Do it right or don't do it at all. Yeah, an all for one, one for all. They prefer clear structure and close supervision in the workplace. So if you've got anybody who's really afraid of doing anything without permission, you know, that tends to come from the purple value system. They like to be guided by very clear rules from higher authority, because there's a respect for higher authority. And the rules must be very, very clear. Guidelines are there. They want to be with others who have similar beliefs. They do not feel comfortable being taken out of their tribe or out of their group. So it's actually really, really important that they have in any space, and I noticed this in South Africa, is that we had provision for them to be able to identify with a group or a network or a supportive structure within the work environment. Law and order provides security. Cleanliness and neatness is important. It's actually really interesting, and this gets carried through to the blue as well. They generally seek approval for anything that they do, and approval for themselves. Okay, somebody strong in purple. They are staunch and upright and will fight for their beliefs. They will defend their beliefs no matter what it takes. That's what leads to the faction fighting. They like to talk about their values and concerns, but really only within their group, within their closed group. They're often found in service organizations because there is a strong focus on support and being able to support others. Seldom seeks the limelight. So somebody who's strong in purple really likes to be part of a group in the background. They don't like to stand out. Naturally colorful and creative, which almost seems to be a bit of a misnomer. But if you look at the Peruvians, if you look at a lot of the tribal cultures and what have you, they all love bright colors and patterns and designs and geometry. So you actually see that coming through. So they're very creative in their own way and within their own environment. Negatives, we said, fearful, revenge, superstition. Hostility can lead to violence very quickly because they're defending their group, their tribe. Believing in witchcraft, no individuality. Not much thought is put into considering one's own nature. That doesn't even come into it. They don't question themselves. They only know themselves as being part of the group. So they don't necessarily see themselves as individuals. They see opposition as personal attack. And that's where we ourselves, if we are deficient or unstable at that level of the spiral, that's often where our sense of worth actually gets challenged, where we can actually see something that opposes our own beliefs as a personal attack. And that's really interesting because many of us over the years have struggled with that sense of self-worth. And old souls very often, remember, go back to the beginning, have often come into very, very challenging family environments where they've not had the stability and security of being able to fully form this layer of the spiral, this level of the spiral. So it is really interesting, you know, when we experience those triggers, it's kind of like being able to then work out that what we are experiencing is not personal. So yeah, there's always that self-worth issue that begins here. Inflexible and don't see other points of view. Stressed by happenings that we don't understand. We've said lack of structure, not knowing how things work. That's part of what leads to the superstition. Fear of making mistakes. People in society who are so afraid of doing something because they're afraid of making mistakes. will be very strongly in purple and quite probably blue. They believe in omens or signs. You know, this is where you get the super don't walk under a ladder, or black cat walking across the path. You know, so it's all of the omens and the superstitions, the tea leaf readers, very, very important to those with purple. And they don't like, and they are very stressed by rapid changes in the environment, which doesn't allow them time to adjust. They become very fearful and unstable. So as a child between 0 and 2, if there were rapid changes in our environment, that would have caused a lot of internal stress without us even realizing it. Values, security, religious and traditional beliefs. Very strongly steeped in those beliefs and values. Extended family, sacred or holy places, working close to family and friends, strong belief in law and order, and clear roles, which you've mentioned. Decision making, how these individuals make decisions. They use natural occurrences as signs. Consult fortune tellers or traditional healers. They always want somebody to tell them what the right decision is to be made, rather than it being an internally led process. They expect their employers to set clear rules for decision making. They will refer decisions to elders councils or authority figures, always looking for an authority figure to approve the decision that is made. Decisions guided by what would benefit the family, relatives, the church, or the tribe. And that is very important. You know, sort of how will my decision affect all of these other people in my environment, which when we kind of get to the yellow level, our decisions are very, very strongly guided by what is right. You know, it's the internal, what is right for me to do? And that's what is most important. And very often at this level as well, there is a reliance on group agreement. So it's not an individual decision-making process. There needs to be a consensus. There need to be other people agreeing that this is the right decision to be made. And I don't know about you, you know, I see even in recent years, as part of this growth process has been happening, that a lot of these particular aspects I have been working on within myself as well.
Yeah.
You know, this ability to make decisions without needing approval from anybody. That's so deeply ingrained, and it cuts through and it goes back through all of those levels of the spiral where we've been strongly conditioned to focus that aspect of ourselves onto authority figures, elders, everything that is external to ourselves. Okay. Does that... So you'll have this, you'll be able to pick that up in the recording. And what I will do is extract this for you as a little booklet so that you've got the reference after this. Yeah?
Great.
Thank you.
It's interesting doing the questionnaire, actually, because there were so many questions I was looking at that I could see that, you know, and I was doing it automatically. I wasn't thinking about them. But every now and then I'd look and I'd say, oh, actually, that's where I would have gone before. But now that has no meaning to me, you know, and it was really interesting to see all those things. I kept thinking, I must be filling this out wrong because there were so many of the same things.
Do you know what? Okay, so what's interesting is that our value profile changes. Because as we evolve within the spiral, the lens through which we are seeing the world becomes colored by a different layer. So as we go through these shifts and these crises, our value profile changes. So yeah, it's not static. And I think that's also really, really important to understand. And as we go back and heal certain layers, we could find that lens for a period of time becomes a really important one as we rebalance it within ourselves.
And part of what we're doing as well, you know, like that question there where you were saying about how when you make a decision and not to be worried how it's going to affect other people, because that's been sort of inbred in us as being people who are caring and respectful, is that don't do that because it'll have a greater impact. But and that was part of what I struggled with, you know, when I was trying to decide whether to post what I said yesterday, was what is the knock-on effect going to be? But I have to say it because actually it is being integral, and also the fact that I'll put it, and it could be not controversial, but you know what I mean, is that sort of, it could have other implications what I'm putting, you know, because obviously it's a message and people can read into it what they choose to read into it. But I had to do it because it was about me being honest to myself rather than but I would never have done that before. Never.
No, you're absolutely right. And that is it, because sometimes as well, let's take for instance, you know, the decision to do that, we know that it may stress somebody else.
Yeah.
But the stress that it creates, if you have a look at how we evolve on the different layers of the spiral, if it's creating stress in a certain level or in a certain way, that could do one of two things. It can actually give the individual the insight and the impetus and the energy to then evolve for themselves, to question their reactions and responses, and give them the impetus to be able to evolve out of that, depending on how it's received. And that's where, you know, we kind of step back from taking that responsibility. We work on holding our own integrity, as you say, Rachel, sort of really all the way down.
Yeah, and it helps to do it in a group like this, though, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It absolutely, of course it does, because you've got the understanding and you've got the support. And you've got the maturity and I think a level of awareness. But we get practice doing it in a group like this, and then we can go out and be much stronger in being able to do that on a bigger platform.
Yeah, because it is walking through fears, isn't it? It's stepping through those absolutely ingrained fears that we've been so, you know, stuck in for such a long time. Yeah, absolutely. So I hope that's been useful. Let's just have a quick look at the red individual and the red level, so we can recognize within ourselves, you know, sort of where we may be experiencing stress or where we may need to go back, revisit any of the holodynes. So at the red level, so we've had this stress on the tribal system, and out of that we've got the emergence of individuals who actually have more power. What was that, ladies? I missed it. I'm just taking the photograph to send to Mariah, so she's saying thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Right, so we've got the positive aspects of red, which we said, you know, this is about strong self-image. You know, this is that 2-year-old who goes, yeah, I'm an individual and I'm here, you know, kind of thing. And this is me and I have a voice. So it's a very strong self-image, very expressive in sport, music, and the arts as a consequence of that image. But these tend to be sort of individual pursuits, if you like, in respect of using that powerful energy. So it's a love of, so sport, for instance, might be marathon running or long distance running, not really competitive, but a sport that actually utilizes and tests the power of the individual, their ability to stay the course, their endurance. So you get endurance sports. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm only seeing understanding and managing the red individual. I'm not seeing any more of that.
Are you not seeing the chart?
No. Are you guys seeing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it.
No. I saw the whole one for purple, but I can't. It's like stuck.
I'm really not sure.
Okay. I'll just listen. It's okay.
Can you refresh your page?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Okay.
For some reason, I'm on a screen view. I can't move in and out of it. So I don't even see my tool.
It's just so strange that some of you can see it and others can't.
It's okay. It's all right. I have my eyes closed most of the time listening anyway, so it's okay.
Okay, all right. So the positive aspects of red, as we mentioned, this is the individual expression in art or music or sport. And yeah, a typical individual that you might think of as red would be Mozart, who was a bit fanatical, a bit wild. He was his own person, hugely expressive, didn't listen to what anybody else had to say. Mozart was very strongly in red. Okay, and he literally was ahead of his time, and he was a child protege as well. You know, sort of he was actually manifesting these amazing compositions in music at a very young age. Personal power, it's about earning respect, and it's about earning respect of and for themselves, and also other people have to earn respect. So it's moves away from the group value of you have respect purely by virtue of the fact that you're an elder, or an authority figure, to no, now you have to actually show me why you deserve that respect. So it breaks through those automatic placements, and so you can see how this serves society, because it says you have to actually earn that respect from me. It's not automatic, because if it's just an automatic respect, then that person can get away with whatever they want to if they're manifesting in a negative way. So you have to actually show me why. And that is why individuals with a strong red in their profile will very often push your buttons and push your boundaries to test your deservingness of their respect. So your ability to stand in your personal power in the face of somebody who is actually pushing that is going to either earn you their respect or not. So personal power in that, in this sense, is actually really important, to be able to stand up against those individuals. And many of us feel uncomfortable because we're not used to this. We have been, as old souls, we've been steeped in green for centuries, you know, and in the yellow, and it's like, no, I don't really want all of that personal power drama stuff, but it's really, really important because they exist in society, and we need to be able to hold our position and that strength within ourselves too. So testing of worthiness, and very right-brained. So right-brained, you can actually see, is artistic, and very strongly connected with that. The values here on the bottom left, this is about breaking free from group values, so it values individual attributes. What's interesting about red, though, is also about immediate pleasure. So it's instant gratification is a strong attribute of this. So wherever you see somebody with the need for instant gratification, it's very often red that's gone awry. So it's actually filling a hole in their personal power field, which hasn't been properly developed or strengthened. So it's about immediate pleasure. And there's no guilt, which is, you see that on the negative aspects. Immediate pleasure, might makes right. This believes in the force of power and physical power in order to make things right. Might makes right. It believes in winners and losers. Sorry, Bunny?
Is that war? Power and bravado, is that war, winners and losers?
Yeah, that would be part of the contribution to war. Yeah, I win, you lose. Kind of thing. So this would be one of the distortions of the values, but it believes in winners and losers. But also, if one thinks about it in society, the power and bravado we see manifest in certain professions in society that almost harness the hero archetype within us, as people like firemen. You know, those that have got the power and bravado, and they just go in and save people from these raging, you know, infernos. What else would we see? What else could you guys think of in respect of that power and bravado? Sea rescues, lifeguards, lifesavers. You know, they will risk their own lives to save the life of another because it's a test of their power. Yeah, and it's like if they are able to save someone else's life, then they feel as if they've actually won. Does that make sense? So it's an internal sense of achievement. So all of the professions that require an aspect of the hero manifestation, you will find, will be coming from the red value system. Yeah. So what stresses individuals who are very powerful in red is anything that, so here it's bottom right here, anything that challenges or is a threat to their personal freedom, because they've now broken out of the group. Part of their value is their personal freedom as a consequence of that. So anything that challenges their power or freedom is going to create massive internal stress for them. Anything that shames them and loss of face, especially in public. Okay, so you can see now the terrible twos, why spanking your child in the supermarket is not a good idea. Because you get the shame and the loss of face that goes along with it. You take them outside. It doesn't mean do not discipline. It means you need to be able to approach it with a very different perspective, understanding what it is going to do to their inherent sense of themselves and the shame that they will carry around with them for the rest of their lives, if that is done in a public arena.
It's a wonder anybody in their 50s and 60s has actually made it to this age.
Yeah, no. Yeah, if you think about it. Yeah.
So I have two things on that. So when I was teaching, the first year I was here teaching, we were in an open pod system, which meant there were 5 classes within this big room, and they had small dividers. And I actually was not, I was very intimidated by the principal. He called me a powder puff, I remember. I had excellent reviews, but he called me a powder puff. Yeah. Yeah, I know, really. But here's one of the things. I was terrified of him because he was so brutal. But I'll never forget the day this kid in my class was acting up, and I hadn't gotten to my 3rd level. I didn't have a lot of discipline problems, but he walked through. His name was Mr. Prater, and he dragged that kid out. Now, you can no longer do this in Florida. He dragged the kid out in the middle of 100-some-odd kids and 5 teachers and whacked this kid with a broom. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my
I was
goodness.
shamed, and I felt horrible shame for this child.
Yeah.
Here we are. There's masculine. So let's fast forward. I get my psych degree, and I'm working for 3 psychiatrists. Bob Pollock was the head psychiatrist who worked mainly with adults. The other 2 guys weren't so bad. But there was actually a club of people who left this group. I mean, we used to get together because so many people would leave. Because if you thwarted Dr. Bob Pollock, you were fired, basically. You were let go. And I was the golden child there until they asked me to do some things that were out of integrity with my license. And so I said, I can't do that. Within 2, and he was very angry with me. And I started to look for another job. They didn't let me go. I left because I knew the countdown was there. But there was so much power. Here's the thing. These 3 guys started the first managed care in Florida. This was long before managed care in the U.S. They had Disney, which is in Orlando, and Orange County Schools, which is a huge county. So there was so much power there with these guys. And I mean, they've changed over the years, but I just see them so much here in this. It was a break away from the traditional in which counseling was done. That they had this innovation. I mean, they were brilliant.
Yeah.
They were absolutely brilliant. They broke free of the old confines. There were protocols that you did, but they could do whatever they wanted, but they controlled the rest of us.
Yes. Yes. And there you see the misappropriation, the misapplication rather than being aware of this and applying only the positive.
Right. And when I challenge them, I think you know, especially then, I was really careful. Just, you know, I was on call, it was the middle of the night, it was adults, and I'm like, I'm just not comfortable. You don't think I'll do the right thing. This isn't what I've been. And he said to me, you go anyway, which I did. And then I was like, nope, this is the end. I didn't say that to his face because I would have been shamed, you know? And he would have been shamed. So it was easier to fire everybody, you know?
Yeah, sorry, lost you guys there. Very interesting, Bonnie. And interesting observations, because now we begin to see how this can play out in different ways in society. And when we are able to see the whole spiral, we are also able to act and respond in different ways when we observe some of these things going on. So yeah. Let's have a look. So just a moment. I just had to move around a bit there. I've got half an hour, guys, so I think we're just going to have to flip over the orange and the blue and the orange, so that you've got something to focus on for the next 2 weeks. So negative aspects of the red. We've got, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, sorry. We see, yeah, that this can lead to fanaticism, individuals being completely unrestrained by guilt. Now, where do we see that in modern society? Psychopaths, sociopaths,
Yeah.
some of the leaders,
Yes.
yeah, and no guilt. There's no accountability, and there's no guilt or remorse from those individuals. You know, I mean, the good old Mr. T is probably a great example.
And our Congress.
Yeah. Okay. Rejects authority, so rejects the authority of anybody else. No constraints. A danger to outsiders. So it's a danger to anybody that does not fall within their particular sphere of authority or their comfort zones. Dictatorial, and can actually lead up or initiate what we might call hit squads, you know, where we see assassins going into other countries. We want to take over. The Americans, sorry, you know, I mean, Americans over the years, and the FBI and the CIA with their secret drug wars and all of the rest of it, and what's it, the secret life of the hitmen, economic hitmen, as well, who've gone into countries and assassinated leaders, and not just the US, the Brits have done it too. We just don't see it to the same extent, but they've also definitely been doing that behind our backs, and where a lot of people have not even seen it.
And it's funny how, you know, in films, that's all, you know, made to look like it's amazing. And, you know, I was saying to John yesterday, there was something about how, you know, it's okay because we can kill the baddies. Yeah. It's okay, but, you know, who are the baddies really, you know?
That's exactly.
But they're glamorized, so it's like, well, that's okay because they're the good guys, you know? And
yeah. So you can kind of see that if these negative aspects run awry and run amok, there is a need for the evolution to the next level of the spiral, which is the creation of societies that benefit all, that provide another level of harmony. So you can kind of see how this works. That takes the dictators down. And allows individuals the opportunity to find their own voices, that manages the potential anarchy, and manages the hit squads, that rebuilds society in accordance with moral laws and standards. So this is where we get the emergence of the, I'm not going to go through this. I'll give you that in the little booklet. That's the detail of the red individual. But this is where we actually find now the blue emerging, which we covered very briefly. But the blue, which we see from our life spiral and our life process, really is initiated at the time when we go to school. And we get taught all the rights and wrongs and the moral laws of society. And we begin to establish, sort of as blue individuals. I don't know if you want to take a picture of this for Mariah.
Sorry, Mariah.
Rachel.
Sorry. Because you were whizzing, I thought you were going to stop.
Yeah, so here we go. The emergence of blue in the spiral is about truth, honor, and justice. So this is where there is justice for those who've been responsible for the decimation of others, for the war criminals and so on and so forth. And it's justice for society as a whole. The blue actually believes in sacrifice for the greater good. And if we think of that with the justice system, it's about taking some people out of society so that society itself can actually be safer. So that they sacrifice some individuals' well-being for the good of the whole, the greater good of the whole. It's about finding and valuing peace of mind, so you can see the focus on safety and security, etc. So those values actually come into play in order to provide peace of mind for the greater communities within civilized society. It does value only one right way. Again, there is still sort of right and wrong based on moral codes, rather than it being I'm right, you're wrong, which is really what the red is all about. This is about the moral values. There is a right way and a wrong way to do things in accordance with the codes for a greater society. And it values rules and regulations. So if you're dealing with blue individuals, it's no good asking them to kind of break the rules or bend the rules, because they're really, really important for them. Now, that's one of the things that I found so frustrating when I very first came to England, because I came from the South African society where people love breaking rules. And that kind of fed my inner rebel. And I loved it. And I came to England, which is so blue, and we've got CCTV cameras on every corner. It's the most CCTV'd country in the world. On every corner. Everything is the computer says yes or the computer says no.
Yeah.
And you can't do things because that's the rule. Whoa,
Yeah.
did I go through many months of frustration as well with that, and butting my head up against the system until I decided and opted to almost step outside of the system as much as possible.
And the irony of it is that, you know, when you're in school and places like that, people who speak their mind, people who you know, don't care about rules, they're the ones we actually admire, because we want to be like them, don't we?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But school teaches us to be disciplined and to respect
punished. We should be punished.
You'll be punished. Yes, that's exactly. Truth, honor, and justice. You'll be punished if you step out of line, kind of thing. So we've all gone through that. It took me many years to find my inner rebel.
That's surprising.
And now I go, no. But for many, many years, and I mean, I laugh about it now, but when I say to people that I was the shyest individual you could imagine at school, they don't believe me. I wouldn't open my mouth. I wouldn't say boo to a goose.
Same here, yeah.
Yeah, for most of us. Okay, so So the positive aspects of this, you can see why this is needed for a harmonious society and for society as a whole. So the positive aspects are that you get stability. And you don't have this constant fear of who's going to drop a bomb next, or who's going to invade your country, or like Zimbabwe with Mugabe, who's going to murder the next farmer, and put somebody else on the land. I'll just take over it. I'll just take it. So you actually generate and create an environment and an atmosphere of stability, and recognize the value of discipline. And this is interesting because at the moment with the millennials and with the way that society has been evolving, there's very little discipline in respect of staying the course and actually doing the learning. There have been aspects of this that have actually been taken out of the education system. You get moved up just purely because. But no child left behind kind of ethos or ethic, rather than providing the focus and the tools to actually develop each child's individual qualities and inherent attributes that they bring to the world. So this has become really skewed, and there's many people at the moment who are deficient and manifesting the negative aspects of blue. Or who are stressed in this area and don't realize it. Anyway, so blue also is about the creation of more formal religions. So it moves away from the superstitions and the ancestral honoring of the tribal traditions into the greater religions. So this is the home of Catholicism, of all of the more formal dogmas that we see governing society and many, many huge groups of people. So it provides a framework for attributing meaning to life, is what the formal dogmas and religions actually do, until we start questioning that. But it becomes part of programming, and that's what we need to be cautious about. It's about being law-abiding. A strong work ethic goes along here. So even though there are attributes that we can look at and say, oh my God, I was programmed and I didn't speak up, we were also we've benefited from having a strong work ethic that we've inherited from previous generations. The teaching of moral ways, that there is a code of conduct in society, what's accepted and what's not. Being cautious. So when there is very, very strong blue, there's a high level of caution about stepping outside of the box or the framework. Cautious, careful, and left-brained. So you can kind of see how that's very, very masculine. This is where we see a lot of the sixth wave influence as well, because the sixth wave is left-brained. And that has been for thousands of years. So this was the emergence of civilizations and societies going right back to the ancient Egyptian civilization. So sort of like 5,000-6,000 years ago, when we saw those coming through, and the creation of the broader civilization where everybody was working for the greater good, kind of thing. So what stresses individuals here is anything that's vague. And again, I saw this in corporate, and it was really, really interesting for me to begin to work with this. Anything that is vague, anything that lacks clarity, if there's lack of clarity, explain it to me and write down the rules in steps that I can understand. And I actually found, coming from a very strong yellow and turquoise, is that when I was in the corporate environment, my tendency is to give people an overview of what needs to be done and then let them do it. It's like you can find your way of doing it. And it was with this insight that I realized that was causing so much stress for certain people in the team who could not operate that way. So I learned a huge amount by that, because that is perceived as vague and lacking clarity by those that are still strongly in blue. And the same thing happens with people in our environment. So if we get vague about things, you know, we talk about energy and we talk about energy healing, you know, and we can be vague about it. In blue, they don't get that. We would need to be very specific about what it is and how it works and the nuts and bolts, and then step by step by step. So you can almost understand how something like Reiki, when it came to the Western world, how that became distorted in order to fit into these levels of the spiral. So how that has been modified along the way because of this. So what also stresses blues are doubts, anything that is not yes or no, black or white. Anything that is doubtful, where there's a big question mark, causes stress because there's no definition to it. You can't put it in a box. Bypassing systems and breaking rules. Like you don't break the rules. You just don't do that. I hear my mother using language like this, and then I just laugh because she's had a couple of years of just shaking her head at me, I think. But anyway, I said, Mom, I'm not doing it that way. Anyway, so the negative aspects of blue are heavy-handed bureaucracy. That is, these are the rules and you will stick to the rules and that's it. Okay? And I'm going to make more rules, irrespective of whether they actually serve society or not, because I'm in a position to now make more rules, you know? So we see that, you know, bureaucracy mixed with so it's blue probably with a lot of red, or either blue and orange mixed, so it's about personal success and gain. Boy, can you get that influencing the bureaucracy. And very little, you know, sort of stability or discipline. In fact, they cause chaos. So very heavy-handed bureaucrats, jobsworths, as we call them in the UK. It's more than my job's worth to, and that's the way it's done. Authoritarianism, very powerful ruling over society. Mindless conformity by the masses and by people who do not question the reason for the rules. The end justifies the means. So it's saying, well, if the end is a stable society, then that justifies whatever means it takes for us to get there. So there's no thinking broadly in respect of taking the consequences of some of the actions into account, or the way that is achieved. It is guilt-driven. If you think about the formal religions, they govern on the basis of guilt and rigid ideologies. And we've all been through this. So when we start looking at the immature holodynes in blue, we want to look at where we've become confined within those boxes, what the programming has been, and it's been extensive. Sort of how much discipline we apply to what we do, because once we get to green, it's kind of like, well, discipline is not a feature of what goes on, because what's more important is that we love everybody. You know, so it's kind of coming back to some of the basics and saying, well, where do I need to perhaps be a bit more disciplined in my life? All of those attributes. Does that make sense, guys? So you can see how it plays out in society and perhaps begin to recognize some of those aspects within yourselves and within your own spiral and your own life.
You can see as well, can't you, how people, you know, going with the waves. You know, how, you know, you think, well, why can't people see it? Why is there mindless conformity? But they haven't the ability to see other than what they can see. And you know, the waves of creation now, you can see how that connects in.
Yes.
For us to have a different understanding of, they literally cannot see it.
Yes. That's exactly it. They can't.
But
gun control here, that people who are so, you know, don't take away my freedom around guns, this is what we blow on. That's what struck me, and it also helped me understand these 3 psychiatrists, because I really, and that whole organization, they wanted to bring this in. Counseling and therapy was so, you know, this, that, and the other thing, but they got so rigid. they created such a nice stream. There were meetings once a week. You had forms that were more structured, but then it went way into what you're talking about, the rigidity. Don't question this. More
Yeah.
forms on top of more forms. So it almost took away from the good that they had started to create.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can kind of see as well, though, what forces the evolution of consciousness within this, because when the negative actually becomes too oppressive and too mindless and too rigid, you become more and more confined. The boxes get smaller and smaller. There's an internal pressure that builds up, and the need for individual expression. Again, for that next level of individuation, it's almost like a bit of a pressure cooker internally, then actually forces its way through our being, through our psyche, moving us into another level of appreciation, another level of the spiral, another step in our journey. And yeah, sort of the heavy-handed bureaucracy, etc. We still will need the blue level in societies, but we need those moral codes, and we need the codes of conduct and the justice system, everything overhauled. I mean, what we think is a justice system at the moment is an absolute mockery of what truth and justice actually is. You know, again, it's about complete distortion. All of these values and things that are important have become really distorted and have been used against individuals to prevent them from questioning, to prevent their evolution. But you can't, because energetically it's moving forward anyway. So you end up with barriers being broken, with society seemingly in chaos, before a new level of order is then realized that restores the positive values of that level of the spiral. So we're seeing all of the negatives and all of the stresses being impacted on societies at the moment.
Can I just ask you a question, Julie?
Yeah.
So from our perspective, for instance, just getting it clear in my own mind. So I can see how, you know, there's a lot of things that you're talking about that are aspects that I have seen in my own life. Yeah. So like you were saying the other week with the waves of creation, how like old souls have come in already aligned possibly to the 8th and the 9th wave.
Yeah.
Is that, are we in a way sort of been fast tracked?
Yes.
Through these levels?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So we are actually speeding through the levels of the spiral in respect of development. So you do find, like I say, younger individuals beginning to access those higher levels. Yeah. Within the spiral, and part of our job is to stabilize the energies and the frequencies by healing our own inner spiral. So you can almost see, you know, we become rainbow inserts, you know, those diamond inserts where we are holding the blueprints for the positive expression of the totality of the spiral in order for the 9th wave to be realized, because the 9th wave, in respect of its community and restoring harmony and sort of that unification of things, it brings in the moral codes and the truth, honor, and justice from a much higher perspective into harmonizing at the blue level. Does that make sense? So that filters down almost all levels of the spiral.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
You guys okay with that? So for the next 2 weeks to explore some of the holodynes in the blue, you'll be comfortable enough with that. So it's going into that level of the spiral, going, what is it that I need to, what is it that comes up? You okay? Yeah. Right, so have a quick look at orange. I'm not going to go through this because you can actually read through the notes. Let's have a look at the orange. So what forces the individuation is, again, is this like being squeezed and squeezed and squeezed into a tighter and tighter little box. And so you go, I just can't take this anymore. You know, sort of, I really need to the opportunity to expand my life rather than doing the same old mundane things day in and day out, really, is what it's all about. So, and there's a lot of everybody treated equally to some extent, although some are more equal than others within a blue, very, very blue society. It doesn't like people to step out, okay, and step out of line. Whereas orange drives the generation of prosperity. And you can definitely see where orange actually comes into society as well. Orange is about living life in the fast lane. So values that are important, that's where it is this go, 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 go type of energy. It's a desire to improve self, but it's improving self from the perspective of setting goals and then achieving them. Okay, always striving for something better, and this improvement of self is measured in respect of the external status symbols that then are an aspect of our internal image of who we are. So it really is image conscious and status symbol conscious in respect of this improvement. Look at me, look at what I have achieved in life, and I'm driving a Merc or I'm driving a Ferrari, you know, therefore I'm worthy, and you know, I'm successful. So it is about success. It is also about free enterprise, and what this does is it gives rise to a lot of innovation. So it is this orange value and this rise of the individual out of the confines of the bureaucratic society, which have led to a great deal of technical and technological innovation over the years. However, it does become success at any price. It's like whatever it takes to achieve those goals and to be successful is what will be done. You know, the only thing that's important is the goal. So it tends to be very, very materialistic. Positive aspects. Now that's interesting, because you might look at that and think, well, materialistic under the positive aspects might seem like a bit of a paradox. However, this is materialistic from the perspective of what can I create, or how can I make life more comfortable? How can I improve the material quality of life? And that's from a positive perspective, and that drives innovation and entrepreneurship. I don't know where Bunny's gone. Oh, here she is. Yeah. So that's the meaning of materialistic in this particular sense, as a positive. So it's about improving life's quality. It's about entrepreneurship, individual, allowing the individual that expression to drive and create. So it's very creative as well. It's about ambition. It's about taking risks, very strongly risk-taking. But some of the risks that are taken are to the detriment of people and environment. But risk-taking is important. If you don't take risks, then you don't achieve and you can't be successful. Sets very high expectations for the individual, and it's mainly left-brained. Okay. What stresses anybody that's on this drive and this mission to improve life is anything that sets them back. Goal blocks, obstacles, anything that gets in the way of the individual actually achieving what they want. No compromise. And that then sets them back, and that puts them on a path very often where the ego takes over, and it again becomes like the red and another version of the red, winners and losers. Okay, I've got to win, I've got to win, I've got to achieve my goal. And if I've got to win, then you've got to lose.
Yeah.
kind of thing. So it draws on that the immature level of the red and pulls it into the orange. And if you think about orange as color, you know, doing color therapy, I've always found this really interesting as well, because orange is a combination of red and yellow, yellow that's above it and the red that's actually below it. So it leads to materialism, which is the focus on material goods to the exclusion of all else. Fanatical, egotistical behavior, destroying environment for profit, because the success is measured by the bottom line and by profits. This is where orange is. So you can kind of see, you look around our world, and where is it? Where is our world? It's in blue and orange, and a lot in red, blue, and orange. Most of it. It is thoughtless and destructive. Shady deals, that's underhanded deals, because it's important to succeed at all costs, and it leads to underhandedness, and we see a lot of that in our political sphere. So you mix this with the blue and you've got all those, you know, like bureaucrats who are being paid off, and lobbyists, sort of corporate America that's buying up the bureaucrats. So you can see how these two levels are playing amongst each other in the most horrendous way, negative way, but it's creating a cauldron or a boiling pot for the rest of society.
You just see these like false smiles. That's what I'm seeing now, is just like these smiley faces that are, they're just not real.
Yes, absolutely. Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know, sort of stars, success, white teeth, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
You know, and younger and younger. Plastic surgery. I need this and I need that. And it's all absolutely so strongly in orange. Yeah.
Fake.
How I look, what my image is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, the fakeness of it. But that is actually, they're creating an internal pressure for themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're constantly chasing that image, that success, that projection at all costs. It's all projected externally. All of this, you know, sort of is an external projection of an internal drive that people don't understand, and they can't see beyond it. Bear in mind what we were saying initially, is that at these levels of the spiral, the individuals that are in these levels cannot see beyond those levels. So if you've got somebody in your environment, for instance, it maybe would help to make them aware of the impact of their actions upon themselves. Okay, rather than trying to talk to them about the green trees and the physical environment that's actually being destroyed. Rather the impact of their behavior, and that what that is actually doing to their own internal well-being, or their ability to achieve success, will have greater revelation in respect of supporting their evolution than trying to bring in some of the green concepts before they're actually ready for it. But you can kind of see this, though, is that once the environment's destroyed, all of the pressure, once their family environment's destroyed, the physical environment's destroyed, there's no more resources, profit gets squeezed, sort of they're not able to feed or fuel their materialism. They can't fill that hole inside because it's not going to be filled by any of this. It's kind of like pushing the way forward into a bigger picture. There's got to be more to life than this. And this is typically your burned out executive who spent 30 years of his life chasing success symbols. And some of them die doing this. You know, they don't ever move beyond this particular value system. But this is typically your burned out exec that gets to a point where he says, you know, I've lost everything. I thought that was what I wanted. I've achieved all my goals, but I seem to have lost everything in my life. What more is there? What is the greater meaning and purpose behind all of this? And in that questioning, it opens the door for the transcendence into the next level, layer of the spiral, which is green. Okay. Which is about restoring harmony in relationships. So, bearing in mind it's we've gone for 2 hours, how do you feel about working with the blue and orange for the next 2 weeks?
Good.
Good.
How's that feel? Yeah.
Good.
It's interesting because it makes more sense now. You can
Yeah.
see the picture more for yourself, the layers you've gone through, can't you?
Yes, that's
Right.
exactly it. You can see how one flows into the next,
Yeah.
and flows into the next, flows into the next. So it really does help, I think, at each level to spend some time exploring those attributes within us and stabilizing. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up in the next 2 weeks.
Oh.
See what
I can
manifests.
guarantee it'll be a lot.
Okay, ladies.
God help us all.
Oh no! So are there any more questions or comments or insights?
No.
No, it was very thorough. Thank you.
It
Yes,
was good. Thank you. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
You welcome, and I'll send you the notes through so that you've got the detail to work with as well, that you can really sit and explore it. I used to spend hours diving into and out of each one of these levels when I first started working with it. It's really very, very insightful and tremendous work. So Natalie, you okay? You've been very quiet. I know.
Yes, no, I'm good. I'm just taking everything in.
Okay, you're soaking it
Yeah.
up like a sponge.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful, ladies. And Mariah, do let me have the questionnaire when you get the opportunity. I'll do that in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Where are we now? Today is the 3rd, so 2 weeks will take us up to the 17th.
17th. Okay.
That sounds good for me.
Is that good for you guys?
Yep.
Yeah, it should be
Yeah?
okay.
Okay. So hopefully that day will be good. So thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
and enjoy working with it. I look forward to sharing the rest with you next time. We'll do the last 3 levels next time.
Yay.
So
Yeah.
you'll be at Bonnie's next time, will you?
Yes, I will. I'll be in a completely different environment. I'll be there I'll be in Orlando on Tuesday.
You'll be warmer.
Yes,
Oh, God.
but it's supposed to get cold at the end of the week. I'm like,
Oh,
That's all right. I'm well equipped. I've got winter and summer.
keep it layered up.
Yes.
love to you all.
And
Okay.
you.
Bye. Thank you.
Lots
Love
of love to
you.
you all. Thank you, everybody, and look forward to the next time.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, big hugs. Bye.
Hey, Natalie.